are live.
All right. So if you would like, we'll start.
Sounds good.
Okay. Last time you asked if we could bring in cleaned up copies of those, where we stand on the open proposals.
Yes, ma'am.
So I do have everything except wages here. We do have a counter for wages, but I want to walk through the other ones first. 405. Okay. So on Article 5, this is where we left off. Our proposal remains the same in 5.6. Compensate members of the negotiating team while you're at the table. Article 11, hours of work and overtime. We stand on our current proposal to add court time in 11.6.
Are we TAing these as we go?
If you guys are willing and ready to TA them, absolutely.
I don't think we have any problem with 11. Or that's the and sick leave. I don't care about that.
You want to walk through them first
Those
and
darn
then
three
come
words.
back and we can decide if we want to TA them
Yes, ma'am.
after we have walked through them all. Bereavement leave, Article 15. The only change is in 15.6. We have changed city manager to police chief for approval.
And remind me, what was the big change? Oh, I see a lot of red here without having to.
Steps got added.
Steps got added in 15.2 to the definition. We also added 2 additional travel days with approval by the city manager.
Okay.
And generally just changed the language to allow for an order of additional leave to be used.
We can dip into sick now, right?
Yes.
And this was brought about because you wanted to make it universal. Was it different?
Yeah, we are
LIUNA?
trying to make it standardized across all of our policies. Right now, they're all different. The definitions are a little different. The use of additional leave is a little bit different. So we are trying to standardize it. But primarily, the biggest difference here is the addition of the 2 additional days and the addition of 15.6, which allows for departmental or even citywide approval for certain commemorative events.
Okay.
Resignation, Article 16. You guys, I believe, are okay with the language in 16.5 that defines in good standing, employed in good standing. So we haven't made any changes there. Article 20, vacation leave. We haven't made any changes. I think you guys were okay with all of the language regarding sellback of vacation. Article 21, sick leave. This is our original proposal. The only thing that we did change was the table on page 2 of this policy. We struck at 25%. We talked about that last time. Retirement in 29.3, we are agreeing to the $100,000 cap that you all proposed at the last meeting. And we don't have any other proposed changes to that. Article 30, we are still proposing a 3-year agreement. Appendix D, we do have on page 2, it is special assignment E, number 5. We have added a proposal for sergeant pay for a corporal assigned to perform the supervisory duties in place of an absent sergeant for a continuous period of more than 15 consecutive working days shall receive a 10% increase in pay beginning on the 16th working day. So you have to work the 15 days first before the sergeant pay would kick in on the 16th day for the remainder of the assignment.
Okay, so and just for clarification, despite the multiple schedules we work, it's just that 16-day working.
It's 16 forward. So after the 15th day of working,
Okay.
it would kick in.
And again, I know we're sitting here splitting hairs, but what about unscheduled work days? Like if falls, like, what if the 15th day falls on July 4th, but it's the normally scheduled day off? Would that be counted as a working day? I just would rather flush it out ahead of time.
If you think that some clarifying language
Well,
would be
if
helpful,
working
we
just
could-
means a day that they work, I'm cool with it. But
that's
if
the
it-
intent.
And the
Okay.
way that I'm interpreting this is if they've worked 15 days, it doesn't matter if it's their regularly scheduled day or not. If they've
15
worked 15 consecutive days and they have
As an acting sergeant.
right.
So
Yes,
equivalent of about 3 shifts.
that's the
Ish.
intent.
Okay.
15 consecutive working days.
Roger that.
Okay. And that's all we have on those. So do you want to go ahead and move on to wages, or do you want to have
Yeah,
some
let's take a
discussion
look at
about
that
these
because I think
first?
there's only 1 or 2 in this packet without seeing wages. Did you get one?
Okay, so on wages in year 1, we've been hearing you say that we're trying to get to that magic number of $50,000 annually to start. And we do recognize that agencies around us are getting closer and closer to that $50,000 for starting officers. So we have moved the bulk of our proposed increases, we've moved it to year 1.
Okay.
So our proposal is to start officers at 50,000, just a little over $50,000 a year. That represents, if you look in the column second to the last on the right-hand side, it's an 8.43% increase in starting salary for officers. We've also made some other changes, some minor changes, but to the officer pay grades, there's still 16 steps. But before we had a varying 2.5% to 2.75% in between the steps. We've moved those to 3% in between the steps. And the step in step 8, the increase has gone from 8.5 to 7.5. So it smooths it out a little bit more in between each step, except for that step 8 came down by a percentage.
Okay.
So you tried to get to that 3% between each step.
There's the old.
Right.
The old was weighted till the step and then
Right.
leveled off, and now
Okay.
it's just level. And that 1% was pretty much spread out over the 7.5.
Right.
Exactly. So if you
Okay.
look over in the increase over current at meets and the increase over the current at exceeds, those last 2 columns, you can see that, first of all, the starting is 8.43% increase. And then you have just under 8% in both columns until you get to the end, it increases all the way up to 9.5. So it is a higher increase at the top of the scale, and it's just spread out a little differently.
So the max for officer was also increased by about 1%.
Yes.
Okay.
A percent over the
Yes,
starting.
ma'am. So,
Yeah,
okay.
a percent more than the starting. So it's a total of 9 and almost 9.5% for the max for officer. For corporals and sergeants, you know, we took a look at your first proposal was to add 2 steps for corporal and 3 for sergeant, I believe. And then I suggested that we look at something that had a larger gap. Well, you guys came back with your second proposal, which had a very large gap. for corporals and an even larger gap for sergeants. So what we are proposing is somewhere sort of in between. We are proposing a 10% increase at the beginning for both corporal and sergeant, and then adding a step for each. So those corporals and sergeants who are currently maxed out, this would at least give them another step to grow a little bit more. But the starting for corporal is an additional 10% over where they are right now. Same for sergeant. And then the increase at step 7 is 10% for both of them. And then, of course, the increase at step 8 says not applicable because we don't currently have a step 8.
So you're proposing raising entry-level corporals up 9.9% above what they are currently receiving.
Yes.
And then sergeants are 10.01 on top of what they're currently receiving.
Right. I plugged in 10% for each of these. Of course, with rounding, you're going to get those little odd, slightly off in one direction or the other. But basically, it's 10%.
So so basically, it's the 843, call it COLA for everybody, and then the 2 supervisory positions will add about 1.6-ish.
Yes.
The only question I have is the spread of 19.4. Does that include? Does that grab that last step on the supervisories? Because I have 19.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. I didn't change that.
Okay, because I was gonna say, because that's what it was. I just want to make sure I'm not.
So the spread obviously will be a little bigger with that extra
So
step
it'll end up
added.
at
And that's on,
2-ish.
Yeah.
My smartphone worked faster. I can find it out real quick. But, okay.
Okay. And then in years 2 and 3, because we are front loading the increase, we are proposing a 1% increase in years 2 and 3 across the board. So just for your information, for us changing from what we originally proposed, the 5, 2, and 2, we went to the 8.5 to band 1 and 1, and that increased our proposal by about $600,000. Is that right? So it's a significant increase because they're compounded. So those 1% increases in years 2 and 3 are compounding on.
You're saying that increased your cost by 600,000?
From our original proposal.
Is that including the 10% for corporal and sergeant?
It is, yes. So questions?
Anybody decide have any questions?
I don't.
Scott, Chris, Pete,
Not at the moment.
JJ. Would you mind if we caucus?
Not at all.
And my smartphone is saying 23% spread now.
That was close.
23.
Appreciate you letting us caucus.
Sure.
If you'd like, we can go up kind of article by article and talk about them.
Okay.
We'll start with Article 5. Our counter to that was our initial proposal. So there was an MOU, it was last signed between the city and the Fraternal Order of Police back in 2013. You made a comment at the last negotiations that you didn't feel that the city should pay, quote, FOP to go to conferences. And I just took the opportunity I always thought it was kind of a give and take relationship between the FOP and the city. And it's kind of clear that we're giving everything and the city's taking everything. The city uses our gun range for training, qualification of new hires. Instead of having to drive all the way out to JSO's range on the north side, Lawdy, out in Stark, we allow the department to use our gun range. We allow them to use our lodge for training. We allow them to use our property for training. We allow them to use our lodge for citizen events, for appreciation dinners for our volunteers. When the department flooded my lodge last year, no harm, no foul. We went and fixed it for the volunteer appreciation dinner. With this MOU expired, the department's just not going to be able to use the FOP property, unless we can get an MOU as part of this. So I don't know if you guys have a copy of this.
No.
From 2013. Okay.
So you're saying if we don't reach an agreement on this article, that we wouldn't be able to use the lodge anymore for police recruitment activities?
I believe that, and I apologize if you didn't know how much the department did use our property. And also recently we gave Beaches Energy an easement and access to the property to be able to abandon the overhead line of JTB, which I believe was one of the last parts of the overhead electric distribution. We let Beaches Energy, unabated access to the property to be able to bury those lines and improve the electrical grid for the city. Again, we didn't ask for anything. So for the city's counter to be 2 people, if it's their scheduled work hours, to be able to sit here on RG, I mean, I don't think that's commensurate with what the FOP gives back to the city in terms of the use of its resources.
Okay.
Article 11, hours of work and overtime. It was made pretty clear at the LIUNA negotiations that sick leave is still ingrained in the evaluation process of the city. So although we appreciate the city, you saying that you're encouraging employees, I still think the city has a long way to go. And as such, I don't think you guys are ever going to budge on the sick leave. So we're not going to say that we're okay with it, but we don't think that, in other words, we're okay with it being in there.
And that was a hard pill for me to swallow.
I understand.
I mean, because, I'll be honest with you, Karen, what Keith said last time, there are employees that are going to come to work sick to maintain.
And I would argue that that's irresponsible behavior on the part of the employees. If you come to work when you're sick, it's not only putting your own health at risk, but those of the people around you. So, and as for LIUNA, you all have not had any issues in your department.
Well, sick time,
with evaluations and sick leave, correct?
I have not. I'll say this: I can only speak for the evaluations that I have written and the evaluations that have been, that I've signed.
And I think that also the early warning system plays a key factor in that. As a sergeant with over 10 years of experience, and I do the early warning evaluations every year. Okay, and I know that I remember how many categories we look at, 6 or 7. 5. Okay. However,
maybe the 6. They added the 6.
They added 1. So I don't know if it's just that we do things the way they're supposed to be done with regard to the agency, and other departments don't, right? But I would hate to see that there comes an administration that frowns on you using your sick time.
Well, certainly if we have some of those issues in LIUNA, number one, you remind us frequently that you're not negotiating for LiUNA. And so, you know, if we have any issues with your department or your unit that we need to address, we're addressing those like we would with LiUNA on an individual basis. I think they're isolated incidents that we are working through, but again,
And
they don't
again,
have any
it's-
bearing on this negotiation.
Well, I will say this, that to speak to, and I don't know if you know the process of what the early warning system is, but it does look at several categories, including external, internal complaints, use of force, things that as supervisors, we look at, we conduct a yearly evaluation. And one of those was added a couple of years ago was the use of sick time. If you have meet a certain criteria, you have to wear the scarlet letter of you use too much sick time. And as a supervisor, we are basically told to take into account any of the early warnings that the employee is on year after year. So it's still, it's obviously not the factor, but it is a factor. Again, employees have to, they're told for using sick, you're placed on this early warning system for using too much and too many days of sick time.
It's written in policy.
So
If you have
that's
so many uses of sick time in a calendar year, then if you breach that ceiling, okay, I got to bring you in and sit you down and go, you know, you used sick time 5 times this year. All right. How can you sit here and tell me you're encouraging for people to use sick time, but yet we've got to look at it as part as a precursor to somebody having a behavioral problem at work?
So that's written in policy,
Mhm.
your,
Yes, ma'am.
your departmental guidelines?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's like I said, it's an early warning system. Right after the first of the year, we receive memorandums in our printouts from HR with every employee that works for us as sergeants. And we have to include that as part of our early warning document that we send.
To show that we looked at their sick time.
So again, I do believe that, and I'm hopeful that your comments that you guys are encouraging sick time. However, it's kind of ingrained where it's really not.
And unless
encouraged.
I'm completely wrong, when this early warning system came out, because it came into existence since I've been working here. It didn't used to be. And then one day it was. It was my understanding it came from this building. It came from HR. Whenever it came out, it was pushed by HR that this is what it'll be. And that-
I'm not aware of that, but it's not a citywide policy.
Oh, it's not.
It is not.
I did.
No.
All right.
So again, that's where 11 is fine as proposed
Okay.
with the changes to court time. Again, we'll say our piece, but we'll leave it at that. Bereavement with the change to police chief, which we appreciate, fine as proposed. Resignation, we've already talked about it ad nauseum about the word probation but we appreciate at least there's some language so that our members know if they're in good standing or not. Vacation, good as proposed. Sick leave, good as proposed. I will echo Scott's earlier comment at one of the last negotiations. I'm hopeful that this dropping from 720 to 700 isn't some sort of, year over year negotiation after negotiation. We're going to see the city constantly chipping away. You said that's not the intent, but we truly hope that is.
That is not our intent.
I know,
Yeah,
but
I mean, I can't speak to what a future
Again-
administration might say or do, but at this point, that's not our intent.
retirement, little retirement. The 100,000, although less than the keeping up with the inflationary, which is at 105, we do feel is a happy medium. We are also willing to take the backdrop increase, which is, if I remember the actuarial study from a couple of years ago was only a couple $1,000s a year. So it's kind of shameful that that isn't included. We'll also take the COLA off the table. And then the chapter monies. I mean, did you cost out the lowering the multiplier at 2.75 from
I did
3?
not.
Okay, so it was just a threat.
No, it wasn't a
It was a
threat. It was a
threat.
conversation about
It
it.
was a
We're
threat.
making some adjustments.
So we're obviously the city makes it a package proposal. You always take the chapter money. You always have taken the chapter money. You always made it where I was made clear as day, 2017, that the city's not willing to budge on that. That being said, we'll go ahead and include the 185 monies. So
So-
basically, it's pretty much as proposed.
Okay.
Again, because, you know, my membership perceived your conversation as a threat. So I just
So
want
much
to let you
so
know.
that my phone blew up immediately
Yeah.
after the last negotiating session. All right? People that don't sit here at this table interpreted what you said as a threat to attack our multiplier. All right? Whether or not it was intended as a threat, I understand what state statute says. Okay? But to bring it up in the course and the way you did, that all of a sudden now we have to consider that the chapter money is going to pay for this benefit. And if we don't have that chapter money, you might lose that benefit. Not your exact words, but paraphrasing. Everybody that called me, texted me, saw me in the hallway, for the first time ever, the city is directly attacking the multiplier. For the first time. All right, these are people that follow the negotiations and follow what we say. All right, so I'm gonna shut up now because there's more to follow.
Appendix D, we appreciate the inclusion of that working up a grade language and the discussion about what a consecutive working day is. I see there was no talk about shift differential, so that'll put us the only agency in the area without any sort of shift differential for night shift.
Which means we're pulling that off the table as well too.
There was one question I had with the sliding around of pay.
Yes.
You're not going to adjust anybody downward, are you?
No.
Okay. Can that be anywhere added? I don't want one of my officers who's at step 5, who technically that number may be lower. I just don't want somebody.
We're proposing an
Okay.
8.5% increase.
I get it.
So
Okay.
everyone will stay in the step that they're
Okay.
in until their anniversary date. So no one will, the minimum increase is almost 8%.
Okay.
7.9.
And you guys can say with 100% certainty, nobody runs the risk of going down.
No one.
Okay.
Everyone will get an increase of
Okay.
nearly 8% at the minimum.
Okay.
Plus the 3% on your anniversary date. These are
Correct. I just
these are
wanted to
now
make sure
3%
that during the
bonus.
gap
So,
between
in
the
fact,
contracts.
Ashley ran some numbers, took some representative current employees. And for officers, you're looking at a 20.87% increase over the 3-year period.
Will that include
To be-
steps?
Yes.
Okay.
For corporals, it's a 22.62%
Mhm.
increase. And for sergeants, it's a 22.61% increase over the 3-year
Yeah,
period.
that matches
Significant increase.
what we have. All right, that was our concern with D, is just making sure that in that gap period between the implementation of year 1 and their evaluation, that there wouldn't be any adverse adjustment to the employees. But if you guys say there's not, that'll work.
Okay.
Again, not happy about not being the only agency without the shift differential. See, Scott got off at midnight last night. Chris and I both got off at 3 a.m. There are dozens of studies about the psychological and physiological effects of shift work and going back and forth. And again, I think it's a huge recruiting tool that the city could offer that they're not. In addition, it's also a tool to get more tenured officers over to a night shift. There are actually several sergeants that have said they're going to bump the newbie sergeants if a shift differential was put in place, the last one we proposed. And with them, they would bring their tenure, their experience. He's not one of them. But that's, again, there are several ancillary benefits to that very, very small ask that we made. But again, the city, you guys made it clear you're not considering that. So,
Well, I want to be clear that what we are offering is over a 20% increase over a 3-year period.
I understand that, but again, we came out from the very beginning saying that our goal was to be competitive. We will be the only agency in Northeast Florida that doesn't offer a shift differential. And that could be young officers know they're going to be on a night shift. Older, more tenured supervisors, more tenured officers could be looking at night shift. Again, although I want to say minuscule, petty, 3%, for them to bring that experience to night shift, for them to bring, being FTOs, being senior, seeing all that organizational, institutional knowledge they bring it's such a small cost to the city.
When we did this back in 2020, I had a sergeant in an administrative position, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, tell me if we could get a shift diff approved, he'd come out of that admin position and go back to nights. He'd do it in a second.
Well, remember in 2020, we did make a lot of improvements to the pay plan. We added some special assignment pays and some other additional pays. In this particular year, we are making the most significant movement in the pay scales that, in my experience, ever here.
But this is also the most significant inflationary pressure.
This doesn't
I don't argue with that.
So,
but-
This doesn't surpass 2017. Y'all
certainly does in what we're offering. Yes, it does.
So, I mean, I'm not going to argue, but yes, this may be the most expensive compensatory package the city's offered. However, double-digit, tax increases, the availability of ARPA monies. There are other revenue streams that have also increased. There are inflationary pressures where everybody's dollar is worth. So just say it's the biggest cost, or the biggest compensatory package, is just not looking at all of the other factors. I mean, but we're one of the smallest out of the 3 beaches in terms of the compensatory packages. So, those other 2 cities are making an investment in their public safety. They're adding officers.
We are also making an investment in our public safety.
You guys
And David, it's not fair to say that we're not.
But you haven't added
we're
an
not making
officer in over
investment.
10 years to patrol or detectives. I mean, there's been zero of it. You brought up buying cars from ARPA. The reason that we're having to scramble to buy cars is for years. We weren't buying cars. We have cars now that I pulled a downed car off the line to give to one of my officers the other day. A downed car. It was ready to be auctioned off. We had to bring it back into service. Our radios don't work half the time because of a lack of investment over time in our radio system. Half the time we can't even get on the radio. We just hear boop. And I don't know if you guys have ever fought somebody out on the street, but to hear that boop when you're trying to get on the radio, that's not a sound you want to hear.
Now, and they just dug a trench around the antenna to put in a banding wire that was never installed for lightning. It was a grounding wire. Okay. How long has that antenna been there without that grounding wire? And
So I'm sorry, we're not negotiating for antennas and.
I understand that, but
We're
you
negotiating
brought
for
up that the
benefits
cars were
and
bought
pay.
with ARPA money. But basically the purchase of the vehicles was righting a wrong, because there was never a true scheduled vehicle replacement program, right? That's why we're driving cars that are 12 years old. For many, many years, the city would give $250,000 to the department to buy cars. Well, as inflation would come about, that $250,000 would never change. It was always $250,000. Well, it used to buy 6 cars, now buy 5 cars, now buy 4 cars. And it was that mentality, right? We get a car crashed, not our fault. Would we replace it? We would never replace it. Okay, why? Why wouldn't we replace the car? So ARPA money was used basically to correct the wrongs of the past, whether or not. Okay, great. ARPA money bought cars. everybody was under the impression, right? At least I was under the impression when we got the word that the city said, hey, we're going to buy all these cars. Well, hot dog, what do you know? And then I find out last 2 weeks ago that it was with ARPA funds. Okay. Wow, that was a big downer.
Partially with ARPA funds. The city is funding the remainder, and the city has established an 8-year replacement car program for the police cars. So you're right, we've righted it wrong, but we're also investing in the future. And then to go back to the officers, there have been 2 officers added in the last 10 years. We added 2 officers to the Downtown Cape program.
Yeah,
But that's.
David's saying patrol and detectives.
The absolute foundation of any police department is its patrol function. Yes, you added 2 officers to the very, very geographically defined Cape area out of a totally separate, more robust budget. There has not been, we've seen double-digit population increases and 0 officers added.
When Charlie Latham sat up there and said that he's going to get 6 bodies added to the police department, 6 bodies added to the police department, it was sold to the police department that those 6 bodies would go to the patrol division. There are 6 patrol squads. That's 1 officer per squad. When it got approved, you know where those 6 bodies went? Downtown Cape. They went to Downtown Cape. Patrol division never saw them. All right. So it just seems like, Karen, I'm always talking about the same things over and over and over and over when we come and we sit down and we do this. All right. I'm not going to sit here and say that in the last 2 to 3 years, I have not seen some improvement. I have. It's welcomed improvement. Okay. But it just feels like that we are being held hostage every time we come sit down at this table. For some reason, we're being always held hostage. And this time it's the economy. All right. 2 years ago, it was COVID. And for the love of God, I'm getting tired of it.
So you feel that this offer that we're making today is not reasonable and fair?
I believe that it is an attempt. Okay. We have tried to point out, and I know this is only our 4th meeting. This is our 4th meeting, right?
Yes.
This is only our 4th meeting, but we've tried to point out the competitiveness in which we have got to be competitive.
And I think that this proposal makes us competitive. I think it addresses that. And remember, just a few months ago, we implemented an across the board 3% increase for every employee in the city. That was in reaction to the volatile conditions that we're all experiencing right now, the cost of living. That was our attempt to at least put a stopgap measure in place so we could get to negotiations. We recognized we had a lot more work to do. But when you consider the amount of the increase over the year, over the past few months, it's very significant.
All right, we've got one more thing, don't we?
Yeah, the wage. So this is kind of the 1% is it ends up putting us so far behind the other agencies in years 2 and 3 that we would either counter with this being a 1-year agreement, because we do feel that first year does make us competitive in year 1. However, that is going to be very, very short-lived as the other agencies outpace us in years 2 or 3 significantly. Or we would come back with our original proposal of the 3.75 for years 2 and 3, which again keeps us competitive with surrounding agencies where we can get as close to apples.
And we're making that because we're taking the backdrop off the table, the COLA off the table, the shift diff off the table. We're acquiescing on the 185 money. All right. So.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. You are proposing either a 1-year agreement with a reopener on wages only? Does
Correct.
that mean that we?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
1-year agreement. We're not wage reopener. 1-year agreement.
Or 3.75 in year 2 and 3?
Yes, ma'am. Or if you guys think a 2-year and you can go 3.75 on the second year, but we just that 3.75 is what we need to keep pace with Atlantic. That's going to be going 5 and 5.
We did your math. We used the 2184 as we did your math,
Mhm.
okay?
So hourly rate,
Even
if you
hourly,
consider the hourly
they
rate right
destroy
now,
us. They'd be over 5% higher
at the end of the
that
3-year period.
Yeah, and that-
Certainly not in year one.
But,
No.
but we're not looking at that 1 year. Again, we highlighted at the last meeting the significant differences between, and the uniqueness of our city and the demands we place on our officers and our supervisors that the other cities don't have. That is demonstrated in the executive and skilled pay among other positions in the city. Every single high-level position is paid double-digit percentage higher than Neptune or Atlantic, commiserate with the uniqueness and the size of our city. We're not arguing with that. Please, I'm not,
We're saying it's not a bad thing.
we're
We
not
understand.
saying, we're saying that our city is larger. We do place unique demands on our supervisors that they don't. So that's why we feel that and it's to add to the other thing, we'll come off of the much larger increase to the sergeant. You guys move the supervisors as one group, if you will, whereas we kind of just moved the sergeants. Our proposal last time was moving the sergeants a little bit more, and we'll kind of acquiesce to that with adding the step and just moving together.
Okay. I think we need to take a caucus.
Okay. last one we signed?
We just pulled it and looked at it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have a 2014 one.
So are we on right now?
Yes, ma'am, we
Okay.
are.
So Sergeant, I was wondering if you could tell me what the difference is between that 2013 MOU and this 2014 MOU with
Don't know.
FOP?
I'll be honest with you, today's the first time I've seen either of them. We had to dig them out of our archives.
Okay, so I have a copy for you.
Of the 14?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think it should cover the same terms as that 2013 agreement,
Okay,
but it's currently in effect.
okay.
There's no expiration date on it. So I'm going to presume that all the comments about utilization of that property were not informed, or you're taking those back.
So that's y'all's claim?
Well, we have an agreement, so I'm asking you, what's the difference between those two agreements?
It's the first time I've seen the 14.
Okay, so our
There's
position
no
is,
expiration date.
there's
on
no
it.
expiration date. It's currently in effect to utilize that property. So unless there's something else that you know about, when you said that it's expired and we can't.
Well, the
use
city
it.
hasn't been adhering to these terms. So, I mean, you haven't been using it on just Mondays and Wednesdays. The city hasn't picked up my trash at the property for months.
You can talk to David.
But
about it.
we're mixing.
Right, help me to
We're mixing
understand.
apples with oranges here. This is
Why-
a utilization agreement, so we still have a right to utilize the property. You might have some contention as to whether or not we are doing
Okay,
that
so it says
according
here
to
5, so
terms.
written request to exit from the agreement?
Is
Well,
it in
then-
effect?
Well, then we will submit our written request to exit from the agreement.
So we're straying far away from the subject of today's negotiations. This is not part of your union contract, correct?
Well, it's an agreement between the city and.
Which
the-
is not incorporated into the contract.
This was never codified into the contract. correct?
And so your position is if we can't reach agreement on Article 5, you want to
No, I
withdraw the
just-
MOU?
No, I was just trying
Isn't that what you
to,
said?
I was trying to explain and was hopes that we could bring this into the contract and
It sounded to me as if you were threatening us that you wouldn't reach agreement on Article 5 unless we.
No, you had said
if we
that
didn't
you-
reach agreement on Article 5, you would withdraw the MOU.
no, we were trying to explain what the FOP provides to the city.
I understand.
And the benefits that we provide, and that Article 5 was not just, as you stated, paying us to go to conferences. It was kind of a more holistic understanding of what the FOP provides the city.
Okay, I understand, but that language is not in your contract.
Okay.
And we're trying to negotiate based on what is in the contract, and what
Okay.
we have control over in today's negotiations. This MOU is not part of that.
Okay.
Okay? So if we can recap, I want to make sure I understand where we are. Articles 5, 11, 15, 16, 20, 21, and 29. And Appendix D, position classification and pay plan. Are we prepared to TA on any or all of those?
I mean,
Well, our at the table offer.
I think they're all inextricably linked, so no.
Okay.
Because part of us negotiating the way the chapter monies was an understanding that that's $150,000 that we're now, excuse the simple terms, but giving back to the city and negotiating away. So that in our minds is just, part of the total financial impact of the contract.
Okay, if that's the case, then do you all want to come back with a counter on all of these proposals?
We just did.
And we made an at the
I'm
table.
I'm not clear as to what your counter is on all of these other than wages.
What-
Because you didn't give us a counter on retirement or any of the others.
Yes, we did.
I thought you
Yes.
said that you agreed to those terms.
No, we agreed to, basically we counted everything that we got today.
We agreed to 29, all right? However, we did an at the table counter for wages,
But that's
Okay.
the only one you gave us a counter for.
okay? And
But in order
like
for us to
David said,
TA
they're all
off,
linked.
they're all linked. So
So are you saying if we had an agreement on wages that all of these are, you would agree to all of these as they are written, including Article 5?
Yes, I believe that's what we were trying to say.
Okay, I didn't understand it that way.
So the cities, so we get this just so we, you rejected our counter for Article 5 and your proposal, recounter for 5 is as written.
Yes.
Okay.
The ones that I handed you today, that is the city's most recent proposal.
Okay.
Okay. And
So
our
then
proposal,
I am prepared to say that we will amend our last counter to 5 as written.
okay. So at this point, your proposal is either a 1-year agreement with year 1 wages that the city proposed,
Yes, ma'am.
or the city's proposal with the changing years 2 and 3 to 3.75.
Yes, ma'am.
And then everything else, all of these other open articles would be, you would agree to.
As they were proposed
As
today.
they
Yes,
were
ma'am.
proposed today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, at least I'm trying to understand exactly where we are, because I think that we're going to have to take it back. We have to have another meeting with council.
Okay.
And then we'll have to schedule another meeting for after that.
Okay.
Okay,
Now, so obviously we're getting well beyond, now we have to start talking about retro to 10-1, because I know you're out next week. I'm out the week after that.
mhm.
What is the city's position on that?
If we can get this wrapped up and, as soon as possible after we're all back from vacation and after we've had a chance to meet with council again, any wage changes will be retro to 10-1.
Okay.
That's generally our, our process.
December.
Obviously, if we drag out and, we have several times gone all the way to the
We
end of
did.
the
We went to
calendar
December
year,
in 17
and it
and
was still
20.
retro to October 1. So, I mean, that is our intent.
Okay.
And I don't think either one of us have any real interest in trying to drag this out past December.
Like I
mean,
said, we know we have a shrinking pool of prospective hirees as well as officers that are sitting on the fence, and we are working to get this done as expeditiously as possible so we can keep our officers here and give our county the best shot at getting
And we want that as well. I mean, we understand the need to get into a competitive position for recruitment. So I'm gone next week, and you, Sergeant Cohill, are out the week after that, the week of the 19th.
unfortunately, yes.
So the following week is the last week in September.
Well, I'll put an asterisk on that. It would have to be after 5. I'm in a training class on the 19th through the 23rd. I am available. However, it would have to be after normal hours. And I have no problem scheduling it for any day other than Monday, where I have a separate meeting at 6. But I know your team, that's putting a little bit of pressure on you guys for the after hours.
After hours, meaning we could start at what time?
My training class is at UNF, and I haven't gotten the itinerary yet, but I'm assuming it'd be done by 5.
Do you want to maybe schedule for the following week,
The 26th.
week of the 26th,
I can probably do 26 and 27.
26th and 27th?
I'm available, I'm available that whole week.
26th and 27th?
It's fine.
Does that sound good? Either,
26.
you're not good for the
Good with
27th?
27, but not-
Why don't we do it for the 27th then?
So
Were we doing 1 o'clock again or 10?
2-1.
1 o'clock on the 27th?
Don't work for you.
That's fine for me, it's fine.
That's okay.
Why did we do
All right.
All right,
Perfect.